in.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. And welcome to the show. This is On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. Now, this is a Monday show, but we're on a Wednesday. Some scheduling issues came up, and I appreciate you giving me your patience, giving me your time as we bump it over. We had a really good episode of OTP Tuesday last night, so if you missed that, make sure you go check it out. We were joined by XC2. First time in his career that he won the XC2 class. It was Ryder Lafferty sat down and talked with us, and then Zach Osborne was also on that episode as well. So a couple really good conversations. Zach Osborne, as everyone knows, raced the Camp Coker GNCC this past weekend. He has some plans to race some more GNCCs in the future. You can hear more about that on yesterday's episode of OTP Tuesday. Today is OTP's Weekend Review with Stu. As I mentioned, I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and we will be joined here in just a few moments by none other than Stuart Baylor Jr. So glad we were able to put it together and get him on the show so we could sit here and chat and talk about things going on in the off-road world. I do want to let you guys know that Beta Motorcycles is the official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast. That's this podcast. You're listening to it. Beta Motorcycles has been family-owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual-sport motorcycles that are known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta Motorcycles are the best-looking bikes on the market and back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models and to find a dealer near you to get yours today. Beta Motorcycles is a supporter of the podcast. I've been riding my Beta motorcycle. I put some time in it last night. Did a little hour-long moto trying to see if I could race this weekend. It's not looking good. It's not looking great. The second turn out there, I had to dab my broken leg, my bad leg, and it definitely stunned me. Definitely hurt a little bit, but I was able to keep riding through the rest of the day, and it felt fine. I even hit a couple jumps. I hit one of my creek jumps that I have out here, and I was hitting bumps kind of hard and really just working in a turn track. So I felt good on the bike, felt comfortable on the bike. The leg felt good to everything else, but afterwards, I could barely walk. I mean, I was limping around my house, and the pain got to me quite a bit after I got done riding. So exciting that I can get on the bike and ride. Exciting that I have such a great bike to ride. That thing is awesome, especially in that turn track. I mean, it's like an extension of your body. I would just think where I want it to go, and it went there. And it's completely bone stock, too, so that makes it even more exciting that as I test and tune and kind of play with some clickers and mess with some things, that it's only going to get better from here. So that being said, I might hold off on racing this weekend, but eventually, here in the next little while, I do plan to get back out there and see what I can do as far as racing is concerned. No expectations, just want to go out and have fun. I miss racing my dirt bikes, and I miss that kind of mental battle throughout a race, and I miss riding all these different cool places that you get to race if you go to a track and race on the weekends. So that's the plan. For those that are new to OTP, maybe you listen because Zach Osborne was on yesterday. Maybe a lot of you just listen when Stu Baylor is on the show. This is OTP. We are the largest and the first, I would say first, definitely the largest off-road podcast, kind of focusing on the world of off-road racing, more specifically the East Coast for now. I am trying to dabble into some more of the West Coast stuff, but we bring you all the latest news, the updates, the gossip, the team changes, everything going on. If it is relevant that happens on a weekend, you can hear about it on the Pipe Podcast. So it's cool to see so many shirts out at the tracks now. It's cool to talk to so many of you at the races. I know a lot of times I'm like right in the middle of doing something or chasing the riders around, or I don't know. A lot of times I feel like a chicken with my head cut off. So if we do talk at the races, just know that I am super grateful for it. A lot of times it seems like I'm kind of rushing around, so I don't mean that to take anything away from you. It's just when I'm there, I'm busy. You got 3 hours during the race, and so I'm just trying to get everything that I can. But can't thank you all enough for listening and supporting the show and for chatting with me at the races. Also, thank you so much for the support, everyone that's bought T-shirts. I've been handing out so many T-shirts and selling so many T-shirts here lately, so couldn't be more thankful for it. It is so cool to me when I walk up to a track and just see rows of OTP shirts. It's kind of a surreal feeling, so thank you all for that. But if you are new to listening to On the Pipe podcast, welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. And as always, be a friend, tell a friend. If you like these episodes, share it with somebody else that might like what's going on as well, because this is what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to broaden our horizons and get more of a light on off-road racing, trying to put it in the forefront, trying to get the same coverage of off-road riders that there are in motocross and supercross, and ultimately get the same money coming in that there is in motocross and supercross. So everyone listening to this right now, you are all a part of it, and I appreciate you coming along for the ride with me. This episode is also brought to you in part by Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer and a financial advisor that helps clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. If you or someone you know wants to save and invest for their future, or is already retired and needs advice for income during retirement, Zach Tussle is always my first recommendation. Find out more by Googling Zach Tussle or on their website at financialadvisors.denvernc.com. Or you can find Zach on the social interwebs. If you type in Zach Tussle, he's on there. He was on the show last week, so you can also go to that post, and he's tagged in there, and you can reach out to him. A lot of cool stuff that he's doing, and he is one of us. So if you want to see your money make money, Zach Tussle is the guy to talk to. That being said, we're going to dive right into this week's episode. We're talking all things Camp Coker GNCC. Just to go through the results, Ben Kelly takes the win once again, makes it 5 in a row for the season. Now, keep in mind, I'm pretty sure that ties Caleb Russell's all-time record, and I'm pretty sure the GNCC all-time record is 6 consecutive wins in a row. So if Ben Kelly is able to go out to Indiana and win the Hoosier, which is the next GNCC, that will be his 6th win in a row, where he will pass mentor and former teammate Caleb Russell's all-time winning consecutive streak, and he will match the GNCC all-time consecutive winning streak. So on the verge of history is Ben Kelly as he starts off his year going 5-0 on the season, which is absolutely impressive. Trevor Bollinger making his 2nd consecutive podium appearance, this time in the 2nd place position. So awesome for Bollinger to get back up there, get back on the box, put himself in 2nd place, and get that gain of confidence about him. I was super pumped to see Bollinger up there, and even more pumped to see Bollinger say, "I'm back." That's what we've been waiting on. He's dealt with some knee injuries, dealt with some stuff off the bike, and now 2 podiums in a row, Bollinger himself says he's back. So that was the exciting part for me, is for him to, hey, acknowledge it. I'm back. I'm here. We're on the podium. This is what we're doing going forward. So pumped for Bollinger. Also pumped for Grant Baylor. Grant Baylor making his return back to the podium. Super pumped to see him up there. I think he was super pumped to see him up there. Even went as far to say that just being on the podium felt like a win. So pumped for Grant Baylor, pumped for Trevor Bollinger, and pumped for Ben Kelly on the verge of GNCC history. Looking down in the XC2 class, Ryder Lafferty grabs his first ever career victory in that XC2 class. He takes the win at the Camp Coker GNCC, which just a year ago left him concussed and started a string of injuries. So kind of got that monkey off his back. We talked with him about that yesterday on that episode of OTP Tuesday, so it was cool to hear that directly from him as well, but cool to see him take the win for his first time in his XC2 career. Lyndon Snodgrass takes 2nd place on the day. He went down in the first corner, was the last person into the woods. He ends up putting in a charge and making his way all the way back to the 2nd place position, which will earn him the white plate, the points lead in that XC2 class. It was taken over by Lyndon Snodgrass over the weekend, and Holding the white plate up until this point, it was Mike Witkowski who would round out the final podium position in third place. He was injured at the last race, was able to battle through that, still dealing with a little bit of the lingering pain and injuries from that crash that he suffered at Bigger Buck. So cool to see him be able to hold on and get up there in that third place spot. And it wasn't easy because third place through ninth place in that XC2 class were all within the same minute. Yes, third place through ninth place were all in the same minute. The ninth place finisher was 1 minute off of a podium. So pretty crazy racing going on in that XC2 class. Looking at the XC3 class, Brody Johnson takes the win and extends his points lead. Zach Hayes, a former XC3 champion, holds on for second place. Both of those guys have been ripping. It's really cool to watch them race and watch them battle as we go on throughout the season. So Zach Hayes putting himself in that second place spot, and then Hunter Neuwirth getting on the podium once again with the third place in that XC3 class. And then looking at our WXC class, Taylor Jones getting back in the win column, taking the center of the box in the WXC race in the morning, with Corey Steed just behind her in second place, and Rachel Archer will round out the WXC podium in third. Top amateur of the day goes to Grant Davis. So Stu and I kind of talk about all those results and more here in just a few moments, including that top amateur battle, including those WXC battles, including how tight that XC2 racing is, and all the storylines from XC1 and 3 as well. So once again, thank you so much for being here wherever you're listening. If you could go ahead and hit that subscribe button, whether it's Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you're at, go ahead and subscribe to OTP. You will be the first to get these episodes. For instance, this one, I'm dropping it in the middle of a weekday, and if you are not subscribed, then you will not know that it gets dropped. So if you are listening to this, it is most likely that you are listening to it before everybody else because you saw it pop up. So thank you once again for all being here. Big shout out to our buddies over at Armored Graphics as well, and Armored Screen Printing. They handle all of our t-shirts. They also handle all the best graphics in the industry. You can check them out, armoredgraphics.com, or on the socials at Armored Graphics. Go on their website, check and see what kit you like the best. They can put whatever logos and numbers and names and stuff that you want on there. And as always, if you use promo code OTP20 at checkout, you can save 20% off of your very own Armored Graphics kit. We got a couple more OTP kits going out to a few lucky members. If you want to get hooked up with an OTP kit, send us a message or send them a message and we'll see about getting you dialed in. Other than that, if you would like your company, your business, or your line of work to be advertised right here on the Pipe Podcast, shoot me a message or email onthepipemedia@gmail.com. We can talk about some things, get you on here. Trying to do some new and innovative things for sponsors of the show, especially as the show begins to grow. So if you want to get your message out to this tight-knit niche community that is the world of off-road racing, On the Pipe Podcast offers you one of the best solutions in order to reach the largest amount of people in a short time span as far as getting your product or what you are selling or your services out there for everyone to hear. So if you're interested in some of the numbers, some of the statistics to how many people are listening to the show and how we can benefit you or your product or your service, please reach out via direct message on social media or email onthepipemedia@gmail.com or contact me directly, whatever you want to do. But with no further delay, we're going to get rolling into this week's OTP's Weekend Review with Stu. We will now welcome the guest of the evening with OTP's Weekend Review with Stu. Here is Stu Baylor. Stu, how's everything going today, man?
It's another day in paradise.
I hear you. A lot of stuff going on down there in the Shoals and the Baylor residence, huh?
Yeah, we've had a rough couple weeks. Injuries at the track. I had my track prep guy, Trent, broke a leg. Dylan, the full-time trainer, had to go back home for some visa stuff. So, yeah, it's been a little bit hectic, but we're managing.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, all that being said, I appreciate your time for chatting with us again this week. I know there's a lot of stuff that's been going on, but kind of some of the good takeaways from the weekend. Little brother Grant's on the podium. Ryder Lafferty's winning his first XC2 race. How do you think your crew and the people that you're helping out did over the weekend? What's your thoughts on it?
It was a good weekend. Ty Ely got a top 3, which was like not even in his goal list this year. He was hoping to get some top 5. So that was a good ride for him. Ryder obviously crushed it. He rode there. He rode well there a few years ago and had some bike issues. I expected to see him do well, and hopefully he can carry that confidence in the next few and pull some more podiums and just stay consistent. Witowski, I was surprised that he didn't quit. I really think that was a much more mature ride than at Big Buck. Like, I think he gave up on himself at Big Buck, and I think he dug into the tank a little bit this weekend. So that was good to see. We won't be doing any bashing on him, because that was, like I said, when he started going backwards, I was actually on the phone with Corey, and I was like, make sure he does not throw in the towel. Like, points. He can get healthy in the next month. So, it's good to see him being smart and mature and making the right moves. And I think we do have a new XC2 points leader now, right?
Correct. Yep. Lyndon Snodgrass did take over the white plate.
Yeah, so we've got a new points leader, and that's going to be the next tough thing for Mike moving forward is keeping his sights focused and not feeling defeated. And this weekend I think was a good step for him. So hopefully he can keep right there. And Ricky obviously back. That was a much better performance than we saw out of him at Big Buck. So the XC1 guys are starting to get cleared, and we'll start to see that class stack back up a little more. I think Strange should be back by the next one, and hopefully I'll be back a couple races before summer, or at least the last race before summer break if everything works out. And then maybe after the summer break, we might see Thad and Johnny G back in action.
Yeah, and I want to get into an update kind of with your situation, everything going on, but you mentioned Ricky Russell. He's a guy that I had wrote down on here as well. He comes back out, grabs the whole shot, and runs up front for a little while. After the weekend, all things considered, time off the bike, his injuries coming into the weekend, where is his mindset at, and where are you at as far as how he did? I mean, was it a good weekend with all things considered, or is it more hungry for more and wanting to be farther up?
I think he's hungry for more. I don't think he was bummed about the weekend. I think when it was all said and done, he had a very respectable ride without being on the bike very long. I mean, he was realistically on the bike only about a week leading up before the event. He's just been training and trying to get everything right with his health. And, he's had a really rough go at it in the last couple of years. Starting with that femoral artery, a life-threatening deal there a couple of years ago. And it's just been like one blow after another. Broke a collarbone, re-broke a collarbone, broke a finger, broke another finger. Like it was a lot of blows. So for him to get out there and finish and run up front and know he's still got the speed, I think he's happy with that. He hasn't really said too much about the weekend. Mainly we've just been having fun, doing a little bow fishing and going that route. But no, I think he knows that he did what he needed to do and knows where he needs to be.
Good deal. And what about Grant? Have you spoke with him at all? Obviously, it seems the sentiment seems to be that a podium felt like a win for him to get back on that GNCC podium. He actually didn't even know that he got a podium until he came through, and they told him he was in third place. Have you talked to him and about how his weekend went and how he feels getting back up there?
We didn't talk a whole lot about the weekend. I know he said that he had a really big crash early on, which is the same thing that happened there at Big Buck. And or Tiger Run, Big Buck 2, whatever you want, a bigger buck. Isn't that what you call it, the bigger buck?
Yeah, bigger buck.
But yeah, I think he had a pretty good blow to the head there early on in the race, and I think it kind of set the pace for a little while. And he said he just struggled to get back through the XC2 pack, and once he got back through those guys, he said, I felt like I should have been up front battling for at least second, but he thinks that if he would have been with Ben early on, that maybe he could do a little more, and that's seemed to be Grant's biggest weakness is the first couple laps. So it's good to see him with a little bit more positivity. He's been pretty down and negative on himself here lately.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see him back up there and just see how genuinely excited and happy he was to be there. But you mentioned Trevor. Obviously, Trevor Bollinger, the big winner of the race, the second place on the weekend. Ben Kelly kind of did what Ben Kelly does. Videos of him out there play riding. I mean, he's doubling stuff. He's doing no-footers over roads. How do you think that whole dynamic plays? Like Ben Kelly right now, not really being challenged so far this year. I mean, now we see him out there play riding. What do you think his mindset is going into this? I mean, I don't know, just as a competitor.
His mindset's right. I mean, he's the days when I'm hooting and hollering and having fun and waving at Bolton and those guys on the side of the track, like those are the days when I ride the best. And it's just another practice day. You're just out hitting your marks. I mean, Ben really doesn't have any pressure from the guys behind him, and he's doing what he needs to do. I think the other guys are a little intimidated by him at this point, and it's funny, like when you become a standout in the class, like everybody usually yields to you. Like you don't have guys running in on you. It's just that that's kind of what I'm seeing. Like these guys, they're in a battle for second, and they're worried about each other, and Ben's kind of doing his own thing, and Ben's not worried about anybody but Ben, so he's doing exactly what he needs to do. I mean, he's crushing it.
Yeah, and so kind of getting back into that thing with you running right down to the wire last year in the championship race, I'm sure it's got to be hard to be sitting on the sidelines, and it's kind of one of those bittersweet things where you're seeing the success of the guys you train with and the people around you, and obviously wanting to be back out there. Have you? It looks like maybe the neck brace has been off a little bit. I mean, is there any updates that you can give us on your injury from your neck standpoint as well as your wrist, and how much either one of those things are still bothering you?
So the wrist is a little bit, it bothers me a little bit. There's little pain here and there, but the wrist is all good. The neck is self-diagnosed feeling better. So I self-diagnosed and took my neck brace off to go pedaling after this weekend, and the performance that Ben had, it was like, okay, we're going to start moving that direction. It may be a little premature, but I couldn't sit there and do nothing anymore. So I've been in the gym about every day in the last week. I think I've missed one day. So trying to get back to where I need to be. And the last checkup, he had me moving my head up and down and side to side to kind of see my mobility. So I figured that pretty much just told me that I should be able to move it. And I gave it, 7 weeks, 8 weeks before I took the brace off. So, like I said, self-diagnosed, should be better. There's a 30% chance that I'm 100% good.
Dang.
I mean, how do you say that shit?
I think Elon Musk just said that 69.420% of statistics are made up. So that sounded good to me.
It sounded good, as long as it sounds good. No, I've got a CT with the neurosurgeon next week, early next week. So I'll know more by the end of the week, and hopefully, if everything goes well, let me see. Let me check these dates before I go and spouting off something that's incorrect.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So the last time we spoke, you were going into the doctor the next day, and I was going in to talk to my boss the next day. I put in a 2-week notice, and he gave me a 2-day notice and told me I could leave today. So here I am talking. But did you get any solid news from that doctor's appointment, or was that kind of just maintaining and hey, we'll see you in a few weeks?
It sounds like you and I had the same conversation. I went in and gave the doctor a 2-week notice. I told him that 2 weeks from now, I need you to notice that my neck is healed. We ended up getting the CT earlier than he wanted to originally, but on a surgeon standpoint, they've got to play things safe. So there's got to be a little bit of leeway on either end, just to make sure that somebody's 100% healed. And normally when they give a guy, it'll be 3 months. Usually it's going to be healed in about 8 weeks. So I'm trying to press on that 9-week mark and make sure that it's healed. And if it's not, we're not going to push it. But hopefully everything comes back good. And if so, then I'm going to try to start getting more motion out of this neck. And it's very tight. Like he had me look up and look down, and with that brace keeping me completely immobile for that long, it was tough. I couldn't even get my chin to my chest, and could hardly look up above the horizon. So, that's definitely going to take some work, and hopefully we'll be able to go to that national enduro and just score some points is still the plan.
The next one.
Yep.
Interesting. Hey man, keep in mind this ain't a broken finger; it's a broken neck.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I did way more than I have with any other injury. I mean, I wore that brace for 8 weeks, 7 weeks, however long it's been. I just took it off this weekend, like while watching live feed. I said, I've had enough of it.
Oh,
I need to start moving this thing.
You're made of something else, man. I can tell you that.
I still wear it when I'm running the dozer, but aside from that, like I tried. I went road biking yesterday, and I tried using it on the road bike, but it's really difficult to look left and right, and I felt more dangerous, so I just took it off and just kept going.
Well, maybe we'll see you out there at National Enduro with a neck brace on, like your orthopedic neck brace, not your Liat neck brace. Sell some advertising spots on it, man. It'll be good for pictures.
Damn right.
Man, another thing I want to talk to you about. Well, actually, before we move on to that, I figured you would be a good person to chat with about this. I have a good buddy of mine, Ryan Page. His little brother, Sean Page, was actually racing in the morning race this past weekend at Camp Coker. And this is a topic that kind of came up on the show before and initiated a lot of talk about safety concerns and stuff going on. We talked about the paramedics that are at the races aren't exactly valedictorians a lot of the time on a Sunday volunteering their time. But his little brother, Sean Page, was actually racing in the morning race, had a pretty bad get-off, and went to the paramedics at the track, kind of talked about some numbness, some tingling, some things going on with him, and they basically said, oh, you're probably having muscle spasms. You'll be all right. So after they sent him on his way, he gets in a car, drives down the ever so smooth South Carolina back roads to the closest hospital. Turns out he has a broken C1 and C3. So broke his neck during the morning race, went to the paramedics at the track, was turned away from medical care, and goes to the hospital and finds out his neck was broken. And the reason I wanted to bring it up with you, because obviously, as we just got done talking about, you broke your neck at a GNCC. And it's a safety concern that is becoming more and more and more and more relevant, like we've talked about in the past. How do you think that a paramedic at a race can understand someone crashed a motorcycle, has tingling and numbness, and doesn't address it?
I can tell you exactly how, because I went through the same situation. And, this situation is starting to piss me off more and more the longer it's not addressed. I've been bringing my surgeon, or I got my surgeon to come to a couple races. He's been bringing his whole family now, and coming to all the races on his own time with an x-ray machine to help out. And I think the first race that I introduced to everybody would have been sometime last year, and he's been coming for about 3 years. He's worked on almost all the pros, and he is willing to come to the races and run a medical team there if the financial backing would basically allow it. He's shown that he's got enough interest to do it, and nobody's showing interest in return. Why not throw it in front of sponsors? Let's try to figure this out. How many injuries, or are we going to have a death before somebody does something about it? It pisses me off because I understand the risk of what we're doing. And little things like Ricky's femoral artery, my broken neck, now another guy's broken neck. I mean, these are life-changing or life-threatening events. We do understand that riding motorcycles is safe. It's not safe. We're not naive, but we love it, and driving a car is dangerous too, and just about anything that's fun is dangerous. So why not try to take an extra step? Supercross has 100 guys there in a full semi-medical unit. We've got 3,000 guys there, and we don't even have a trailer. Like, something needs to be done. Something needs to change. We've got to find an answer to this, and I think that, you know, the paramedics, like GNCC is doing everything on their end to get the paramedics there. I understand that. That's great, but when we can't rely on the paramedics, that's where we need to try to find consistency in a place where there is none. And I think that it's getting to the point that it needs to be addressed sooner than later.
Yeah, and going off of that, it's the paramedics have to be there according to the AMA, but that's providing transportation, that's providing boots on the ground, that's providing help. And I think what the major thing is just like these paramedics not really knowing what to do in that situation, or turning someone away, or the femoral artery situation with Ricky. I don't think it's about having people there. Like, there are people there. There's ways to transport. Like you said, it's about having someone skilled and knowledgeable there to offer these second opinions, to check these people out. And the way that you described it does sound very grim, but it's the harsh reality. It is exactly what can happen. I know there's been deaths in racing where it happens instantly and there's not a whole lot you can do about it, but situations like this could have very well changed someone's life. I mean, when you get turned away, say that you're fine, oh, it's just a muscle cramp, and then you go down the road and hit the first pothole, and now all of a sudden you're paralyzed for the rest of your life. Those are the things that can be changed. Those are the things that can be avoided with the proper attention and the proper person there to kind of direct things. And these paramedics, they do a great job, but
we really need, let's say, a trailer with an X-ray machine, a CT, or not a CT, ultrasound, and a couple splints, a couple bandages, so a good tourniquet, a neck brace, a backboard, and a plan. More than anything, a plan. This is how we address the situation. Obviously, we can't hire a full team of 12 paramedics to go to every GNCC. We would still have to have the paramedics that you can get with the local guys. But if we can have them there on a Friday to go over a plan with somebody in charge with medical knowledge, and you say, hey, if we hear that it's a femur, right here, this traction splint, which they didn't even have one at Big Buck. Stuff like that is I feel like crucial things that we need to have and need to address sooner than later. And there's a lot of, obviously a lot of crashes take place on the weekend, and not that often do we see major injuries. But there's a lot of things that are overlooked, and a lot of minor things, and occasionally major things. And I just hate to see it. I'd hate to see it take the wrong turn.
Yeah, 100%. And it is cool, like things like the Kurt Caselli Foundation. They donated that side by side, and I know the sweep riders run like a KC66 basically pack that is for sweep riders that have like first aid kits and the essentials for helping someone out in the woods and being the first responder. But I think the missing link is the step beyond that where, okay, now we have a serious injury. What do we need to do from here? And I think sometimes some of that guidance is lost, and that's where having a professional to kind of help direct and help oversee, I think is what would be crucial and beneficial to make sure that situations like this don't end up any worse than we've gotten very lucky to have them be over the past several years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's not going to take a lot. I feel like I think it's just, we've got the guy that's willing to do it. We've got to find sponsors and people that can financially back a medical unit. You know, if anything, I mean, hell, maybe it's the Busch Light medical unit.
Dr. Stu recommends 3 Busch Lights for this one, and you'll be feeling good tomorrow. If the problem persists,
that's going to take 6.
Yeah. Might not make you feel better, but it'll make you care less that it hurts. No, but I just, that is something that came up, and I did want to get out there, and I hope Sean gets to feeling better. Glad things got handled eventually. It's just, it's a scary thought, because like I said, all it takes is one pothole, and now you can't move your legs or your arms for the rest of your life.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Or riding 8 more miles after the fact, like someone.
Yeah, I mean, that was stupid. That was stupid. That would have been self-inflicted.
But you finished.
I did.
So one of the I think it was one of the first ones that we did. The question came up, and kind of shifting gears here, but it came up, hey, if Caleb went back out there to race in the XC1 class, how long would it take for him to be up front? And you said give him a few months and he'd be right back up there. This past weekend, he goes out, races the morning race. Obviously, Zach Osborne was out there as well. We talked to him yesterday about that. But did it change your opinion? I know you weren't there, so you didn't get to see it other than some of the footage, but did it change your opinion at all about that? Like, what do you think if Caleb came back out to XC1 right now, where would he stack up?
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot. Carrie, Joe, and Tim, I love the GNCC, so don't get me wrong, but man, they're gonna hate me after I keep making these comments. It was a big show. I mean, honestly, that Caleb still has it. I there's no doubt in my mind. Zach was down there battling with the guy who won this weekend when they were down in Florida. I think didn't Ryder go and do one of those FTRs? He and Zach battled, or I think Zach may have been leading him until the last lap. So you're not going to pull that one over on us, bud. I'm sorry, Caleb, but no, that was. I don't know how the women felt about it. I have no clue, but I know for sure that they were in the lead they were in the physical lead before the end of lap 1. So they had enough speed to make up a minute and pull them on the first lap, and then slow down and play around, and you see them pinning it through a field and doing stuff for photos. I mean, I just gotta call it out. Like, that's the way I see it. I think it was a show. I wasn't there, so maybe Caleb's gotten that old that fast, but I gotta say, I think it's a show. I still think that Caleb is I think Caleb could probably still win an XC1 race if you gave him 3 months from today.
3 months from today.
I would put money on the right track. John Penton, if he had 3 months to prepare for John Penton, he could win John Penton.
So I also found out an interesting statistics. I like looking at numbers and kind of going through some stuff. Caleb Russell has 99 career podiums. So one more career podium makes 100. Do you think that's enough to get him out off the couch and onto the front row for one more?
Maybe we should let him know. If there was ever a time to do it, right now is the time to do it. He could get a podium very easily, I think.
Well, not only that, and I don't. This is such a tough line for me. Even like asking you the question I asked you about Ben Kelly, it makes me feel weird and like this is all y'all's livelihood, and everyone on the XC1 row, it's their livelihood. So I don't mean anything I say in a negative way by any means, but also this is a time and this is a year where if Caleb does come back and race, I don't think that he's going to affect the championship race this year.
It doesn't seem that way.
Unless something crazy happens.
I don't think anybody's affecting the championship this year.
But I don't know. It was just it was interesting to see him out there, and kind of like you said, it seems like he was just playing around. Me and Johnny Gerard were standing there talking on the first lap, and that's when Caleb came through, and he kind of pulled over and like pointed Zacho by, and was like, "All right, now you lead for a little bit." But for him to go out and play ride and have fun, I mean, we talked about in the past how hard it is to beat those WXC girls in the morning, and he's out there goofing around having a good time and overalls the race. So it leads you to wonder where he would be at still.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it would take him a little bit to get back prepared to finish 3 hours that third hour, but I think for 2 hours he would fall right into typical Caleb fashion, and I think, like I said, give him 3 months and he would be there. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind, but yeah, like I said, I feel like this weekend, and maybe it was more of a KTM Husqvarna deal with their guys, you know, their brand ambassadors out there. Maybe they were told to put on the show and play a little bit, but I mean, realistically, they could get into the women's race a little bit and pry there, and you know, I don't know what I haven't talked to women about it. I don't know what their thoughts were on it. Maybe they loved it. I mean, it is cool getting to ride with Caleb Russell. So maybe it was fun. But I don't know. It would be, if I was an A rider and I had somebody drop back that's faster than me and just kind of playing right in front of me, it might aggravate me, possibly. Or maybe it taught him something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things where, like, it seems like you said, it's a cool opportunity, it's cool exposure, but at the same time, like, the WXC is the premier class in that morning race, and then to kind of throw them out there with names like Zach and Caleb, it definitely seems like it took a little bit of the shine away. But one thing I wanted to ask you, and just off of your mindset and your experiences, as long as you've been involved with racing, Jason Rains, he was telling me a few weeks ago, I think at the first Big Bucks, so the smaller of the Big Bucks, about a routine that he would have. And he would go through this routine, and it became his race day thing. That's what we did. Getting ready for it. And he's like, if one little thing was off, it'd kind of just all go through you and make you second guess everything. Part of that whole thing with Caleb and Zach racing this weekend is the WXC the whole routine was kind of thrown off. Like, they did the introductions and then brought them over, then talked about Caleb and Zach, and then put money on the line, and then they did the anthem, where it's kind of like backwards from what was done before. So I heard a couple of the riders talking about that routine got mixed up in the way that the operation went. So would something like that affect you by any, like, do you have a routine? And like, if the opening ceremonies, if you will, are completely changed on race day without you having any knowledge of it, does that affect you at all, or could you see how it would affect other people?
I could definitely see it affecting other people, but me personally, like, stuff doesn't really bother me too much. When I was younger, that stuff would kind of throw me in a loop, but I guess the older I get, the less I care about, you know, those little things. I still have my routine, but once I'm at the starting line, you know, I'm still focused on what I need to focus on no matter what's going on. I mean, there's definitely been days where things get drug out. You know, there's been times where we've been called up to the line and then they have an injury and somebody's got to go get hauled out of the woods. So, you know, there's times where we sat there and had to sit on the line for quite a while. And you kind of chill off a little bit, but once they start going back through everything, shutting the bikes down, you're instantly, your heart's racing again and you're ready to roll, at least in my case.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And so I have this little thing where I am never on time for any race ever. So usually like the first few rows have already gone by the time I get to the starting line. And I think that takes the anxiety and the nervousness out. I'm just trying to make it to the line, so I don't have time to sit on the line and think about it.
You're getting nervous if you're going to make this start or not about the race itself.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've been putting on my clothes like as the national anthem's playing. I'm like, oh crap.
Oh man. Yeah, I kind of can relate. If you watch, like my brother and I are always the last ones to the line. Like there's been times we've missed our introduction.
Bollinger's got to be close too. Bollinger, like the horn will go off, everyone's gone, and Bollinger's bike's still sitting there. I'm like, all right, where's he at?
Yeah. The last one on the line or on the pro road that you'll see every time is the old 314 machine. Every time. No, I think that's funny. But last couple questions here. I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but one thing. So Rachel Archer, obviously another one of those top girls right there in that championship hunt. She's been dominant over the past couple seasons, but going off of that, one thing from that I read about her post from this past weekend is, and she kind of talked about it on the podium, was that her bike made some suspension changes, just complete wrong setup, said it was hard to hold on, hard to really make it work. And that got me kind of thinking too, at the speeds that you all are running in XC1 and the speeds that they're all being pushed to in WXC, battling up towards the top with championships on the line, how much can a completely wrong setup mess with you? So, I mean, I'm talking about bike just feels uncomfortable to every degree, have the complete wrong setup. How hard is it to push through that? And basically, what does that do to your race? Because, I mean, for me, and I guess a lot of the people out there, you'll ride stock stuff. I mean, a lot of people don't even know what a properly set up bike even feels like. So when you all are going through strenuous testing and getting your setups dialed in and comparing it to all sorts of different things, now all of a sudden you got one that's night and day different than what you're used to. How much does that affect your race? It's really tough to say. I've ridden bikes that are absolute garbage to the finish line and felt great. And then other times it's like I'm one step off and somebody else's bike is perfect on that day, and mentally it's tough because you automatically say, all right, this bike is shit, and then you got to get to the point where you're pushing and digging through it. So for example, West Virginia last year, I think Ben ended up beating me by almost 2 minutes, and it was the race right after I had my knee operation, but like I still felt like I should be up front. I just had crash after crash right on the first lap, and I would run him down and cut a 40-second gap into 20 seconds and then crash again. And I was to the point where I was like, okay, so like we shouldn't have. That day it was a tire choice, my mistake, and it is what it is. But I just could not keep the back end under me, and it was just nonstop. And on that day, I could not mentally push through it. I ended up second, but a long, far second. Not even in the hunt. I mean, I pretty much just bailed out of the race at that point and salvaged what I could. So there's days like that, and then there's days like Big Buck this year. Obviously I ended up getting injured, but I made some major suspension changes from last season. And every time you make big suspension changes and go to a GNCC, that's the true test day. Like, did you do what you needed to or not? Are you going to be able to hold on for 3 hours? Just because the stopwatch says it's faster doesn't always mean it's better, because obviously if you're just racing the stopwatch and you go out and you're pushing as fast as you can, your suspension needs to be stiffer than if you're running at 95%. So In a GNCC, you're running at 90-95%. You're not pushing that 5 extra percent where you're extremely aggressive on the front brake and collapsing forks and, you know, needing that extra spring rate or whatever it may be. Before Big Buck this year, I went, you know, personally, I feel like I went way too stiff. But it was one of those days where I think everybody's bike was a little bit off and there was still blood and water, and I was making passes and moving towards the front and gaining on the leaders. And it wasn't that big of an issue. I knew what I needed to address with the following week of testing. But it can definitely throw you for a loop if somebody's bike is significantly better and you know it, like you can visibly see it as a rider, and you're just like, shit, I there's nothing I can do. But then there's the flip side of it where, and every rider's guilty of it. I know I've been guilty of it. I especially when I was younger, it was easy to blame the bike for my results. And that's the first place that you would basically look to is, it's the bike, you know, it's the bike. It's got to be the bike. And, you know, you make changes the next week and you're not any faster. You go back to the same setup that you were on and you're faster again. Well, it wasn't the bike. And, you know, it's tough. Like when you get your mind set that it is the bike, though, it's definitely tough to push through it.
Yeah. Do you set your bikes up for each track or each riding conditions, or do you get one setup you like and run it everywhere?
So I'm a little bit tough to deal with. The older I get, the more I like my setup to be perfect. When you're young, you can kind of adapt to things. When you get older, you know what works and you kind of stick to it. And you want to have the right bike for each round. And I make changes. I have 3 different suspension settings that I use throughout the season. I make my mechanic take all 3 with him to all the races, just in case, you know, the track completely breaks down. You know, it might be let's say a rocky race, but if it rains a lot and it's going to be a mudder and the bike's going to carry a lot of weight, then now we need my stiff setup to set up for like an Ironman track or a Camp Coker, where if it's rocky and dry, now we're going to take my National Enduro setup. My National Enduro setup doesn't change much, but occasionally I'll put my GNCC setup on the National Enduro bike, and then I have a setup that's stiffer than both of them. So we basically have a soft and fast, a medium all the way around, and then a stiff and slow. And then on top of that, I run the same front tire 80% of the rounds, and my rear tire, I change between 3 different tires throughout the season. Last year we made 4 changes, and that 4th change is what bit me in the ass there and the next to last round there in West Virginia. So I stick to 3 tires now, tires that I know, tires that I ride well, and everything's different for every rider. Me personally, I do not think that the 81 is good at all for me. Because
even the rear?
What's that?
Even the rear?
The rear especially. I'm a big lean rider. I lean my bike a lot, and when you do that, the 81 doesn't have a good side knob. So I always notice the back end steps, and every time I used it last year, I had a big crash. So I shy away from that as much as possible. 53 rear is probably my tire of choice at 60% of the rounds. And then the other rounds we run a 33 and a trials tire at a couple rounds last year in the National Enduros.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I've got quite a few changes. My fork height, my sag, and like I said, I'm extra work. I try to find places nearby to ride, and my mechanic and I will go out, spend the day testing, setting up, and making sure that we're ready to go. And that's, I think that was a big part of last year. I was very confident in almost every setup.
Do you test and tune your setups in the same conditions, or do each one of those setups get tested in a different area?
I will go to the track. I will go to the races a couple days early, unless I know exactly what I want to run. We go out a day or two early, and we try to get a little bit of testing and tuning done.
Just somewhere in the area with similar conditions?
It usually I can find a place like within a couple miles. So yeah, hopefully every time it's just like the track, but then there's times where, like last year at that West Virginia round, I actually rode it on the property owner's other piece of property that's, you could see the dirt bike track from it, like it was on the next mountain over, and it was a completely different terrain. So I went out, I got my bike set up. It was not slippery. It was tacky, but very straight line through the rocks. And the 81 was just the best tire of choice. And then we went there, and the track as we raced got slicker and slicker and slicker. And when I get in those conditions, I still lean my bike. And, I just have to, I have to have that 53 for those conditions. It's just something that I personally choose. And, that's kind of a big deal to me, is making sure that I'm on the right setup every time. And when I don't, it definitely shows. I think if you were a good rider, like if you were a top 3 GNCC pro and you had the perfect setup for each round, I think that you would be almost unstoppable. I think a lot of guys get comfortable and confident in one setting, which there's nothing wrong with it. But then you have to adapt to the track for that setting. And there's the flip side, there's the side that says, and I'm guilty of this, I used to never change settings ever. There's the side of me that says, well, if I ride this setting every single day, I know exactly what my bike's going to do and which way my body needs to go to adapt. If I hit a log or a rock funny with something new, then I don't know what my bike's going to do.
Yeah.
That's very understandable and very relatable because I've been there. But what I've come to find is usually a good setup is only a 10% from a better setup. So it's not like you're riding a completely different bike. You can just make it 10% better. So if we can go out and make it 10% better for those conditions, then I feel more confident in myself and knowing that I'm lining up on the best bike. So I think, for me personally, I don't mind the change there. I would prefer change my bike and race the track when I get there rather than leave my bike the same and adapt to the track for the first lap. And yes, obviously GNCCs are rough. Probably 40 or 50% of the tracks are almost the exact same roughness, the exact same dirt, square edge, some big stuff, some roots, some rocks, some off camber, hard slick, and good ruts. And I've got a good setting for those races. But if we go and it's an absolute mutter, or it's dusty as hell, or extremely rocky, that's where I got to make my changes. And about, probably close to 40% of the tracks we do make changes for.
It's really, really interesting. And this might be a really dumb comparison, but as you're saying this, what I put together in my head, it's kind of like a crescent wrench. Like a crescent wrench, you can make it change any nut you want, but sometimes you're going to round the nut off and it's a piece of shit, when there's always a wrench made for the nut that you're trying to tighten or loosen.
That's a good analogy. Honestly, I mean, that's exactly it. Or like trying to use a one flathead screwdriver for everything. If it's too small or too big, it's just not going to work. I think that, and that might be more personal, but it seemed to help me a lot last year.
Especially like we've talked about almost every episode, confidence. Confidence is key. And I think if you know those 3 setups and you know when those setups work and you have that setup dialed in for that track, it probably gives you a lot more confidence going into it instead of, it's the same setup, we're just going to have to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. But, and that's, and like I said, maybe more me than anything, but every time I've done that and tried to make changes before the race, I've always had better luck. Other guys, I think, don't. Even back to when I was a kid, like racing XC2. I can remember one year I went up to Unadilla and rode right down the street the day before and just absolutely crushed it. You know, felt so good the next day. And it's tough to always find that place, but when the longer I've raced, the more relationships I've made and found guys that have similar properties, and it's one of the things that I feel like I said, between my mechanic and I, that was a lot of our program last year, was the extra hours that we put in.
Yeah, I mean that showed on race day too, so it's interesting to get an inside peek at that. Real quick, being a top-level pro, being a 5-time National Enduro champion, full gas champion, XC2 champion, ISD, all that, having the biggest following, or one of the bigger followings, do you ever get the opportunity to test products or tires is what specifically came to mind, but products in general that aren't available to consumers? Like, do you do any testing or have access to parts that the average person can't get their hands on, or is everything that you run and use just 100% anyone can go buy it?
Everything that we run and use on our bikes, anybody can buy. Aside from my Barkbuster mounts and some little things that my mechanic fabbed up. Now, on the flip side, yes, I do get some early testing. A lot of times I'll have to sign like a non-disclosure agreement. Like, we've tested some stuff that comes out in 2024 and 2025 last year. So, and it's definitely cool to be a part of that and get the insight before and know whether I like it or not, because I know it's coming. That part's cool, and it's cool to actually be a part of it and feel like you have a voice and opinion on it. And usually, like with that testing, I'm one of the hardest guys on stuff. So if somebody sends me something, usually it has a note that says, try to fuck it up. Most of the guys in the industry's pretty chill, and like a lot of those guys, they're not necessarily the guys that are handling the sponsorship stuff. And they'll call out of the blue, and they'll be like, "Yo, Baylor, I need you to destroy something for me." And I'm like, "All right, I got you. What you want? What you want?" Well, I heard that you fucked up an anvil with a banana last week. Is that true? Yes, it is. Yes, send it on.
That's where the torture testing goes.
Yeah, but no, it's definitely cool, like to get to play parts in that, and like we're as soon as I'll get back, we're going to be testing a new skid plate and just seeing what we think about it. And over the years, like different companies and some new, some old, I've got to test it, gear, different. Like even to this date, if I call Carl at Moose and ask him for some different style gloves, they'll send different gloves or jerseys that aren't quite out yet, which I think we got in trouble at Sumter for that. Yeah, and whenever you get that stuff, you're not supposed to use it until it's available to the public.
Learn that one.
Yeah, I've learned that one the hard way a couple times. But then there's things that you're like, dude, I rode with it, and I'm sorry, I can't take it off. Like, whether you like it or not, I'm riding with it this weekend. And usually in those conditions, that like I was early on with ankle savers and Fastway and ankle savers signed an agreement. They basically had this peg that I was testing, and when I got it and I loved it, I was like, I'm sorry guys, like,
not taking it off
this weekend. Like, whether you like it or not, we're racing on it this weekend. So there's been definitely been different things like that over the years. Flex Bar came out with a new handlebar that I ran that apparently they're no longer using, but it's like my absolute favorite bar. And like they were like not a month or two, but like a couple years from releasing this thing, and I had it on my bike. I'm like, sorry guys, I'm running it. And I know they had to have caught a lot of hell for that. But I had it on my bike, 2 years before it even came out. And like I said, there's been times where I just fell in love with something and they were still literally undergoing testing. But I loved it. Couldn't get it off my bike and off my mind when it was off my bike. So, no, that's definitely cool. And been having some conversations with some. I haven't signed an NDA on that one. We'll just say that one of the major things that I changed between races, depending on the track, there's a company that we're using that might be coming out with a new one of those things that I might get to test whenever I'm back on the bike. So that'll be cool too. But I mean, there hasn't been an NDA, so I just leaked it pretty much. But there's only two things I changed. I figure you probably guessed what it is, but
this is one of those situations where I'm not sure if I'm supposed to guess or not.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to guess just yet. Guess in like 4 or 5 minutes from now, so it's like irrelevant, out of sight, out of mind. Like that's kind of what I'm thinking. If somebody does listen to this podcast, they're like, well, I listened to that segment and they never even guessed. So like,
we did our research. It wasn't in there.
But yeah, no, it's definitely cool to get to see some of the new stuff that's coming out, and there's times where it's cool and times where it's a pain in the ass as well. Like when you start drawing blanks, and you're like, I don't know if it's better or not. We can't figure out one way or the other, and the companies get to where they're like, okay, well, we need to know because we need to get production. So.
Yeah, and it sounds like the testing and tuning stuff, like you kind of came alive talking about it. It sounds like it's a lot of fun for you to be involved with that. And I've heard from several different people from several different companies that you are a very good rider to work with. Specifically, you mentioned earlier that your setups are picky and you like what you like and you won't stop until you get to that point. But with that comes all the analytical data, and that's what I've heard from other people is that when you're testing products, you can give very in-depth feedback as to like all the little subtle things a lot of people don't pick up on. So with it seems like you like it, and it seems like you're good at it. After you hang it up and racing is over, is testing and developing products, is that something that you could see yourself staying involved with, and would you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, racing's in my blood, so I'm gonna stay with a dirt bike no matter what. But I definitely enjoy that side of things. It's something that comes really easy for me now. It's weird. A name that you probably haven't heard in a really, really, really long time is Nate Caney. And Nate was very big on bike setup and testing. Kurt Caselli was very big on bike setup. And I was staying out there when I was, I want to say 14 going on 15, just signed a factory KTM ride. Just some chubby kid from South Carolina that loved big bark busters and high bars. And those guys were like, hey, listen, I see where your levers are. I see where your bark busters are. I see this and that. I would like to make some changes if you're willing. And I'm like, yeah, like, what are you thinking? They're like, well, right here, we think that, lower bars, like we're both super tall guys and lower bars work for us. And this is why. And they explain it. And then we got to testing, and Nate helped me out a lot with testing suspension, because I didn't know how to relay the messages. And he broke it down in a way that I could understand it. And then Bart Hayes was really good at that as well when he did the suspension side. And then Tom Smith, another suspension guy that I worked with, and kind of just all the testing I've done through the years with those guys, it made it to where I could really put things in a good, what's the word I'm looking for? See, now I figured it out. I can make very fast project or progress with everything I tested. Every project we had, just because the way that I can get the point across, and the way that I can explain it to the engineers or the developers that we're working with. And even with suspension, like I noticed things that most people don't notice, and it was cool. Like, so Ziggy, who owns Factory Connection, came down last year, and and I was struggling with this false bottom. Like I could feel the bike bottoming, but it wasn't actually bottoming. And he was like, wow, he notices that. Like, we haven't had a guy that would actually notice this change. Let me try this. And he tries something out. He goes out and he's like, does it still feel like it has a false bottom? And I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, we changed out the cone down here. Like, nobody ever notices that. Like, nobody. And I've been really, really in touch with my setup. And I think, you know, between all the different guys I've worked with, as well as the injuries that I've had, I think that plays a big effect as well. Just, you know, when you get injured, especially hand and wrist injuries, you really start paying attention to your bike, because it can't be too stiff. It can't be too soft. Too soft, it bottoms out. Feels like it blows your wrist apart. Too stiff, and it just shakes you to death. So, you know, I've always felt a lot out of my machine, and it goes back to, like I said, a long list of guys, but probably the one that stands out more than anybody would be Nate, and the way that he explains suspension to me and how to explain it to other people. That's a big part, is being able to, you know, not being able to just come in and say better, worse, good on hard pack, bad in ruts. Like come in and say the reason it's better in the hard packed and the reason it's worse in the ruts is hand in hand, and this is why. And you know, that's very difficult, especially for young riders, and it is something that's a big part of what we do, though. As you become a pro, you have to be able to voice your opinion and do it in a way that you understand it and you don't confuse the people around you.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And to me, like I said, being the bit of a nerd that I am of analyzing everything, it's cool to hear your breakdowns and hear your thought process on it. But, man, I couldn't be any more thankful for your time, especially everything you got going on. Last question, and then I'm going to let you go. You dug up the stump at Bigger Buck. Where's the stump at? What's the story? Where's it at? What's going on with it?
So my mechanic's dad, Todd McDonald, has it. And if you know Wild Todd, Crazy Todd, whatever you want to call him, I'm sure you heard about the rattlesnake this weekend.
That was him?
The guy that went out and got the rattlesnake, spun it, cut it open, and ate it that night.
That's yes, Wild Todd?
He grilled it up that night.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He said he couldn't let a beautiful animal like that go to waste by getting run over by a 4x4, that he was going to have to eat it. That's Wild Todd. So Wild Todd, when I was a kid, had pet rattlesnakes and pet snapping turtles, and I guarantee he still does. Pet deer. He builds knives for a hobby, and Todd has the most stress-free lifestyle in the world. He doesn't necessarily work unless he wants to work, and he does life like he does it right. The guy has zero stress, and he is very creative when it comes to stuff. So when he said, let me see that stump, I'm going to make something that is unforgettable, then I was like, no problem. If he says he's going to make something unforgettable, a mantelpiece, I don't know what it is and how it's going to turn out, but I was not passing up on that one. So Todd currently has that, and whatever he comes up with, I'm not sure, but we're putting the neck brace on it. I know that.
Hell yeah. I knew if you went through all that hassle and you had that thing, that there was going to be an interesting story involved. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we loved Ben's idea of going ahead, we'll treat the wood and piss on it every day. But when Todd said that he was going to figure something out for it, I was like, all right, we'll do that. We'll do that. But if we don't like it, then I treat the wood still, and we piss on the back deck every day.
So we got a backup plan at least.
Yeah, exactly. Well, either way, the stump is out of the ground, and it will claim no more victims.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear. You'll have to keep us updated when that thing's done, when you see pictures.
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan. Any racing we need to cover, or pretty much covered, huh? We didn't really talk about XC2. How about that 9-way battle?
Yeah. So at the beginning, first and second kind of took off, and then it was just a train for the rest of the race. There was all of them all together, wheel to wheel, just battling. And how about Gus with the fastest overall lap time on lap 1? I thought that was pretty crazy too.
Yeah, and then what? He faded like, what the hell? I don't even know what to say. I'm lost for words. That kid faded like a $2 T-shirt.
Might have been $1.75.
Might have been. We need to come up with a T-shirt for him next race.
No, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him about it, and God, you can't find a nicer kid. But I was wondering that too because, like I said, he came out blistering, and then I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if it was. I don't know. Can't even speculate.
Yeah, that was like, I walked away. I was cooking Ryder's dinner, and I walked away, and I came back, and he's gone from like 4th to like 14th. Quick, like in a matter of minutes. Like, what in the hell just happened?
Off the top of my head, I don't even remember where he ended up finishing.
I think he was like 15th. But, I mean, that is putting on, like, you hear putting on a hard charge, but I've never seen a harder fade. That was impressive. That was an impressive amount of fading.
You nailed it. He finished 15th. But we've seen him there late in races before. So that's why I'm thinking there has to be more to the story other than just falling off. I mean, he's coming off of a podium. He's been running in the front. His fitness has been good. So I don't know if it was a one-off thing or what happened.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check in on that one.
Any of the other XC2 riders surprise you? Lyndon was dead last and had to battle his way back all the way through the pack. So for him to get back up to second was pretty impressive. Ben Nelko, same thing. I mean, he was way in the back and worked his way up to 4th. You mentioned Mike holding it down to get that podium spot, get those very valuable points. What was your biggest takeaway from the XC2 class?
I mean, I feel like Ryder finally did what he needed to do. He's been there for a long time. I mean, the first time we saw him leading an XC2 race was that really dusty race where I think 2018 up at High Point. And he's been up front for a while now, and he's won a national enduro, and just never could do it there. But Ryder's one of those guys. He is the same pace from start to finish. So like as other guys slowed down, like he just stayed maintaining and never really had to push. Just let the race come to him. Very mature and good to see. Lennon was smart. He got himself into a good position and stayed there. I think he kind of stopped charging at the end and just fell into position. Knew he did what he needed to do. Mike, kind of the same thing. He knows the points. He knows they're still tight. He knows he's got 4 weeks to come back stronger. That whole next group, that was like to a T XC2, like what I remember about XC2, like total chaos, like no game plan, just racing. And those guys were at each other's throats, but it was good to see, obviously you're the beta back show. So it's good to see the beta boys up in that group. And Evan, I know, lost his brakes on lap 1, and he made the comment to me. He was like, yeah, it's a good thing that we did all those no brake drills that really helped out this weekend. He said, I felt like I could have been on the podium if it weren't for that. So, it's good to see him kind of coming out and putting in a good ride as well. And it was fun racing. That whole group, Thorne Devlin mixed in there.
Thorne's first top 5 of the season.
Yeah, that was a fun battle to watch all day. I mean, obviously much more fun than the 3 hour or the XC1 as far as the 3 hour race goes. And looked like the WXC had some good battles going on, and also the XC1 I guess had a little bit there, when Grant finally started making moves. But
Dude,
any other classes?
Listen to this real quick though. 3rd place, XC2. Mike Wachowski, finishing time 2 hours, 57 minutes, 37 seconds. 9th place.
How they're all like in a minute?
Yeah, so 9th place, Cody Barnes, 2:58:37. So 2:57:37 from 3rd place and 2:58:37 to 9th place. So 3rd place through 9th place all in the same minute.
Yeah, that's definitely impressive. Definitely impressive.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's tight racing. I don't think it gets a whole lot tighter than that.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was the only battle I was really watching all day. It was fun to stay in check with those guys and watch the position changes. Definitely a fun one. And you know, it's cool. Like even for Cody Barnes, like he can't sit back and say, "Man, I had a terrible ride." You're a minute off the podium. Like ninth place doesn't have a ring to it, but at the same time, you're a minute off the podium. Like you're right there in the game. And
ninth place, a minute off the podium.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Crazy. I think Supercross has less of a gap.
Yeah. What's your thoughts as far as the top amateur is concerned? Because it seems like the past few years we've seen one person just take them all. I mean, I think Brody Johnson won all of them, and then JoJo won, I think, all but one of them. And now it's like a different person every week. Yeah,
it's good to see. Like it's definitely good to see, and we're seeing some young kids kind of finding their feet there in the A class, and seeing some different riders kind of challenge the top guys, and you know, seeing some new names, which is definitely cool. I hate to say it, but like sometimes when somebody like JoJo gets hurt, it puts some blood in the water for the other guys. And JoJo, obviously, probably one of the number one picks this year. I'd say definitely, you know, set himself aside last year, and I was expecting to probably see some top 15s occasionally out of him, you know, as far as overalls. And I think when he was injured, it left the door wide open for some new guys to make a name, and you know, you're just basically seeing the ripple effect now, and these guys all know that they've got a shot at making that podium, and you get to see some different faces, which is awesome. I mean, it's a great part when you see new faces on the podium, and you know, those guys are going to be hooked into the pro classes now.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned when JoJo went out putting blood in the water, I think one of the next people in line that people would have projected to take that top M title for the year, another guy close to home, Bubs Tasha. I mean, hanging out with you, he came out, won the first one. I mean, he's the one putting pressure on JoJo and everything last year, and then he gets hurt, and he's dealing with some injuries and some stuff on the side as well. And like you said, it kind of leaves the door open. Grant Davis got it this week. Tyler Palmer won top M before. And, yeah, like you said, now it's kind of cycling some new names up through there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like I said, it's good to see. And, yeah, I mean, Bubs, basically this winter I had some of the fastest A riders at the track, so I got to see them. And, I had three guys that I would say would basically wipe the class, you know, as far as top amateurs. Alex Luger was riding better than I've ever seen him ride, like actually impressively well. And then he broke his back down there in Sumter. And then we had Bubs Tasha here, who was battling with JoJo basically day in and day out. And then there was days where JoJo was battling with like Liam and some of the pro riders. So, you know, I was watching those three, and it was like, okay, these guys are going to be the ones to beat all year. And then Alex goes and gets hurt. And it was just a stupid crash. And it seems like this year's just been loaded with those. I mean, across the board. And, you know, then JoJo literally just lost traction on the face of a ski jump, like nothing. It is a 15-foot jump. Everybody was like, oh, I heard he got hurt on a motocross, big jumps. And I'm like, no. He got a slick spot coming out of a corner and high-sided. It didn't matter if there was a jump there or not. Like, if you saw where he crashed, it's not a motocross. Like, it is literally a bump. But, you know, he goes and breaks his femur, and then Bubs had a concussion, and then now he's got these fingers where he ripped the ligaments off the inside of his fingers, and his fingers are literally gone. The ligament that runs down the inside of his fingers, so his fingers will just completely go at a 90. And you know, if he gets the surgery to fix it, it would be, you know, a few months down, and it's something that may possibly heal on its own. So he's just basically waiting on that and seeing if that'll help. But and then Grant Davis, he's been having some knee troubles. So like the A class right now, it's like I had all 4 of those guys down here, and I was like, well, my money's on my 4 guys, like 100%. And now all 4 of them are seeming to struggle, except luckily we've got Grant holding it down for us right now. So,
damn, man, I wasn't even aware that he had issues of his own going on. You wouldn't be able to tell by watching him ride.
Yeah, no, he's having some kind of issues out of his knee. I forgot exactly what it was, but it's something he was born with, and the more he grows, the worse it gets. And it's something that I know his dad's talked about it, and they might address it if it gets much worse, but it's something that's given him a lot of trouble and a lot of swelling out of his knee as well. So I know he's struggled with that a little bit, but no, it's good. It's good for the sport when there's blood in the water, and it just sucks as a trainer when you're looking at 4 guys that are all having their struggles, and obviously we're not the only ones. I mean, there's a pile of people that have been injured this year, and it's part of it. But I like to see that when the blood's in the water, you get to see new guys that are pushing hard towards the front. No different than Trevor Bollinger, and I think we discussed it on one of the episodes before. Trevor's a headstrong guy, and with headstrong people, if you find yourself in a hole and you're not really moving, it's easy to settle in for a bit, and all it takes is that one little thing to kind of wake you back up, and you get a couple guys injured, and now he's back fighting up front. And I don't think that even when everybody's back healthy, I don't think that a guy like him is gonna go back to the back. I think he's just gonna he's found out where he needs to be and wants to be, and he's gonna stay there. So
yeah, and the interesting part to me about Trevor is one thing that he mentioned in both of his podium interviews, and maybe even his post as well, was about the first lap speed of everybody else, and him kind of acknowledging and recognizing that he's off the pace from that first lap. Is that something that can be worked on, or is that kind of that whole calm yourself down, hey, this first lap they're going to gain, but I'm going to keep catching them every lap here after?
So if you look back into my career, 2016, 17, 18, 19, I was very off pace early in races. Late in the race, I always had the fastest few laps, and like even days where Thad and Caleb were battling, like I would have a faster last couple laps and really be making ground, and it was so frustrating because I gave up so much time early on, and I spent all day digging myself out of a hole. And I felt like I had the speed to run with those guys, but just not early on. And I started racing sprint enduros and riding a lot of motocross. If you look, I guarantee Trevor will start getting faster on lap 1 because he's with Caleb, and they're going to ride more motocross because that's, Caleb always rode a lot of moto. So, I think that that's what helped me out, was riding more moto and doing those sprint enduros, just a little higher intensity. And, I think Grant needs some help in the same areas, but he's just scared for his tires to leave the ground.
That is very relatable. I understand. Yeah, man. It's interesting that there are so many battles and so many things going on throughout the sport and throughout the classes. Even XC3, like Brody and Zach going back and forth, those have been fun battles to watch as well. So it seems like a lot of the attention gets put on that XC1 class, but right now, if you dive a little bit deeper into the ranks, there's still a lot of good racing going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the tough part is keeping everybody's eyes on other classes. Obviously there's a few classes that GNCC highlights, and that's the pro classes. And, there is still a lot of other racing and racers out there. And I feel like the attendance has definitely dipped here lately, and I hope it's not because of the pro racing not being as good. But, if anybody is out there and thinking about coming, like, come on, it's still fun.
Oh, 100%. What's your thoughts on the next National Enduro? You kind of left as the points leader. Hopefully the goal is for you to be back out there and score some points, but right now, kind of that blood in the water mentality. I think that thing just opened up a lot greater to, Ryder Lafferty sitting second in points. You got Toth that's been killing it in the Enduros. You got Ben Kelly, Bollinger. All these guys. What do you think that next National Enduro round is going to look like?
I don't know. I can only speculate, but Josh Toth rode really well there last year. My brother's ridden really well there. It is one of those races you just don't know. Ben had a standout ride there last year. National Enduro is a lot different, harder to call than GNCC. There's a lot of changes that can take place. I think over the years, if you look back, like, not to toot my own horn, but there's only been one rider that's very, very consistent in all different conditions.
And who's that, Stu?
Just look back. I think you would be kind of shocked to see the amount of podiums that I have, and not necessarily race wins. I don't have that many race wins, but I very, very seldomly finish off the podium there, and about the only times that I ever do is when I'm coming back from injury or are injured riding. So, that's one of those series where it's very difficult for riders to be consistent and stay consistent, from basically the waterfall of Missouri to the sands of South Carolina to the moon rocks of Upper Peninsula and Michigan and everywhere in between. And every track is so different than the one before. So that's where it's hard to call. You can only go off of last year's results. But, now we start seeing, like, end of last year, Ricky Russell started battling up front for podiums there at the end of last season in the National Enduros. Trevor Bollinger started kind of figuring them out. Craig DeLong is riding very well there. Ben Kelly, he's won a couple. Josh Toth, myself, my brother are probably the three that I'm going to have to say, like, those are the three guys that are going to be battling at the end of the season. But obviously it doesn't take much for one guy to kind of come on the scene there. It's just kind of a big learning curve. So, maybe a Ryder Lafferty's going to figure it out, and maybe I'll be irrelevant by the end of the season.
I don't know about all that. But...
You never know.
Because if you go look at the past results, you'll find one consistent rider.
Yeah, it's very tough to be consistent there, like in a place where there is no consistency. There's so many different tracks, different variables, every section's different. The different clubs put them on, so they're cut and marked differently. That's the difficult part about the Enduros is being able to read them and know when to take chances and know when to play it smart and safe and know how to read trail from like I said, Michigan to Florida. Or you never really know where we're racing next season.
Yeah. No, all that's good points, and that is kind of what makes that series fun. You don't get to look at the trail; you kind of adapt and overcome on the spot.
Yeah, it's pretty cool whenever you see races come down to 1 or 2 seconds. Like Missouri 2 years ago, I think me, Grant, and Ryder were all within like a second of each other. So, after 6 tests and 60 miles of racing, 1 second separated 3 guys who had never seen the track, any of us. So that's, it's wild. You start looking back and you're like, wow, there's been a lot of races decided by less than 10 seconds, and none of these guys get to see the track. So they're all doing different things differently, riding different sections. One guy's faster in this section, the next guy's faster in that section. Comes down to a second or two, and you never know what race you're going to see another guy up front, like, Ryder there in Missouri a couple years ago.
Yeah. Let's just hope that those couple seconds or within that 1 second came down to the track and not the transponders that are used.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But anyway, man, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you taking the time out on a Wednesday to sit and chat with us. I think there was a lot of really good technical information here, so super grateful for it. Glad to hear from you, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you around.
All right, sounds good, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.